All right, welcome everybody to the Bakersfield Transformative Climate Communities workshop. I'm Cecilia Grego with the City of Bakersfield. I'm here with Asha with Dudek, we're both gonna do this presentation and go over our draft plan that we put together with many community organizations, community outreach. It's kind of really showing kind of the needs we identify in the community, and then what, based on the feedback we got, what are the key goals and strategies that make sense to implement this kind of community plan / vision. And with it, we also did, we have some potential projects that would fit within the vision that we'll be talking. So let me go ahead and can you advance the slide, Asha?
Absolutely. And one thing to add too, we do have a Spanish translator on the line. So if anybody does need that, there is, you can click for interpretation in the menu.
Yeah, it's in the bottom. There should be a Spanish channel you can go into, and Amelia, who is our interpreter, you will be hearing her voice over ours in that channel. And we also have both Spanish and English on the presentation to help guide with that as well. So just kind of what we're going over today. We're going to do, we did introductions. We're kind of going to do an overview of public outreach. We're going to discuss kind of 3 key elements of the TCC program that we address with this plan, which is equitable housing and neighborhood development, mobility and urban greening, workforce development and economic opportunities, and then kind of where we go from there is the implementation. So next slide. Okay, next slide. First, we want to do a thank you. Not only do we have DDEC and their team, but we also work with some local community organizations and local entities to really help bring a lot of components of this plan together. So we worked with community organizations to do outreach, which has included All of Us or None, Bakersfield Senior Center, Circle of Life Development Foundation, Community Advisory Council, and then there's a consultant DUDEC, and we also work with the workforce development portion. We work with Employers Training Resource. We also got a lot of technical assistance and support from the Institute for Local Government. And then also kind of our key community outreach lead was with the Leadership Council for Justice and Accountability. So next slide. Kind of really the purpose of the plan is really to listen to the public and identify community projects, priorities, and project ideas, prioritize community-based projects within the focus area, and really design an implementation roadmap to complete these projects over time. Next slide. This is our project focus area. It includes downtown and portions of Old Town Kern, Oleander Sunset neighborhood, and what was historically been known as the Lakeview area, but it's kind of transitioning into like the MLK area. So there's a lot of identities people put with these communities and neighborhoods. There's about 83,000 residents that live in the focus area. Next slide.
Yeah. Oh, and one other point too, I just wanted to add that the focus area was, we really worked collaboratively on looking at that, defining it, and really trying to focus on the most disadvantaged census tracts. So trying to make sure that we're funneling attention and resources to where it's needed most in the city.
All right. Again, around over 24,000 residents commute daily, and most of the land uses in the north are commercial. North of, I guess most of the north of California Avenue, we meant to say, is commercial, but there's also a lot of residential both north of 30th Street and south of California Avenue, but there's a lot of mixed uses all throughout the planning area.
And then I just wanted to know, I do see a raised hand, but I think we're going to take questions after the presentation, right, Cecilia?
Yeah, we'll do questions.
Okay.
Just keep that thought or put it in the chat.
Thank you for your patience.
Again, this is just kind of going over the plan organization. in the plan itself, we do an introduction chapter. We review the outreach that was done. We cover these 3 focus areas, and then we discuss implementation.
Awesome. And Cecilia, did you want me to take it over from here?
Yeah.
And I'll give back to you. Okay, great. Yeah, and thank you all again so much for coming. I think that, you know, this is really a plan written for and the collaboration and everything written for and by the community. As Cecilia said, we worked with a lot of organizations and community members throughout the process. And so today we're going to be going basically kind of presenting to you in a presentation format what the plan kind of looks like, what it feels like, what are the items that we touch on in the plan, and then of course open it up for questions. But we really encourage you to read the plan. It's available on the project website, and we can throw that into the chat box as well. And for those of you that have already read the plan, we're excited for any questions or thoughts you might have. We also have we tried to make it a really easy process to comment on the plan. So we have a link available on the project website too. But without further ado, let's get a little bit more into what this plan is all about. So as Cecilia mentioned, you know, the TCC plan has these sort of focused topics, and the focused topics come from really at the higher level. You know, the reason why we are embarking on this whole project is because the city was fortunate enough to get, you know, grant funding to be able to prepare this plan. And so there are certain sort of metrics and topics and focus areas that, you know, we're required to look at, but that are also just really important. So there's these 3 sort of main focus topics, which are equitable housing and neighborhood development, mobility and urban greening, workforce development, and economic opportunities. And so how we sort of laid out the plan is that we have these, you know, topics, as I mentioned, and each of those topics, those 3 topics I described, have goals. And then under those goals are strategies that sort of outline, you know, how over time, maybe different policies or programs that the city implements can try to achieve those goals. And then I'm actually going to turn it back over to Cecilia to cover some public outreach, and then we'll get back more back into the topics. But we're kind of pivoting over to outreach because this actually encompasses chapter 2 of the plan. So you see 2 here. Chapter 2 of the plan is a summary of public outreach, and we felt that it was really important to sort of start with that in the plan to really set the tone, and because that is really what the process was all about, was engaging the public. So go ahead, Cecilia.
Sure, next slide. Basically, I'll just say a little bit of background. There's kind of 2 phases of outreach. We initially did some virtual sessions, which you can view them all on our website. And we did some specific key stakeholder interviews of community members that were pointed out to us that should be discussed, and those individuals were also in the plan. And then we also did some surveying as well. So you see all of that, and that you can see the results of that in the appendix of the plan. So then we kind of started on a second phase of outreach. We got an opportunity to get a grant extension, and really with less, you know, COVID restrictions, we were able to meet in person and partner with local community organizations who I named at the beginning to really increase and really expand our outreach efforts and reach many more people. And the results of it have been amazing. We've had so many people come to the table that needed to be at the table and really give us a lot of great feedback on what they want to see in this plan and what hopefully projects that can be implemented because of it. So, and they also helped us, you know, all of these organizations have their own social media. And so they really helped get the word out when it came to distributing flyers and really encouraging people to be part of this process, which has been really great. We also are hosting a project website where we put a lot of information. I see we put the link of where the plan is in the chat. So you can see all our recorded past virtual meetings that we did, and then and just look at the other information and resources that we put there. Another thing we did with the second phase of outreach is we did a call for projects, because we really wanted to see, we had these focus areas, so we really wanted to hear from the community what kind of projects under these focus areas and kind of TCC criteria, what would you like to see? So and that's what we present ultimately in the project roadmap. So next slide. I'll turn it back to Asha, who will kind of go over the three focus areas in the plan, 3 chapters, and they're all each their own chapter.
Great. Thanks, Cecilia. So again, as you can see here in the number 3, this is chapter 3 of the plan. So this is the first of those focus topics that I mentioned earlier, equitable housing and neighborhood development. So this chapter covers the topic of equitable housing and neighborhood development. It describes the current available housing and risks of housing displacement in the focus area. And as you can see here, I mean, really the purpose of this chapter is to help to kind of facilitate and provide this roadmap for the provision of equitable housing and neighborhood development. It's vital for residents' quality of life, critical component that will minimize housing displacement and facilitate safe, high quality, affordable housing. So some of the tasks that we embarked on was, an existing conditions analysis to determine which displacement risks posed threat to equitable housing, site identification for the development of subsidized affordable housing projects, and strategies to prevent household displacement. Okay, and here's just kind of some facts that we, and information that we gathered throughout the analysis, portion of the planning process relative to the city. So 15 to 37% of housing is owner occupied. Most census tracts are considered, challenged. The remaining census tracts scores were considered poor. Relative to cost burden, each census tract is considered challenged or poor, as I mentioned before, and challenges are often far worse for renters. And again, just to remember that this plan is really concentrated on the focus area, which is those areas that are identified as more disadvantaged within the city. So relative to housing habitability, in the most challenged areas, so again, really kind of that of the focus area, the most challenged areas, approximately 5% of homes are considered uninhabitable. This is what the qualifier kind of, it's actually worse than 90% of communities throughout California. Skipping down to overcrowding, the eastern portion of the focused area is considered, again, in that kind of challenged state. And then in the entire focus area, between 10% and 30% of homes are considered overcrowded. So, what do we do with this information? We embark on a lot of data collecting, existing conditions analysis, and other sort of technical analysis. We work with the community members in listening to their thoughts, their struggles with housing. And then through all of that, we identify, as I mentioned earlier, these goals and strategies related to the focus topics. So, the first goal in this chapter is create a path to home ownership. So as you can see here, we have a number of potential, strategies relative to this goal. And I did want to just pause and let everyone know that, we're kind of opening the book on the plan and trying to give you like a look at the plan, if you will. But there's, of course, a lot more information, a lot more background, and a lot more specificity throughout the plan. So again, we encourage you to read the plan, but this is sort of just like a taste of what you'll see, and hopefully helps you to review the plan. So again, here are some programs and strategies that we identified in relation to goal number 1. Goal number 2 is ensure safe and affordable housing. So you can see here, we've listed some other strategies here. And goal number 3, increase housing supply. So can see here, ADU policies, density bonuses, micro units, just kind of in general lowering the barriers to development of housing, really looking at vacant or underutilized public land. Goal number 4, protect residents from housing displacement. So here again are some of the strategies: emergency rental assistance programs, local relocation benefits, rapid rehousing and housing first policies and programs. And then with that, I'm going to move on to the next focus topic, but I'll just pause real quick. Cecilia, did you have anything you wanted to add relative to chapter 3 before I move on?
No, I have nothing to add.
Okay, great. So this is chapter 4 of the plan. It's called Mobility and Urban Greening. Again, one of the focus topics. Okay, so what's the purpose of this topic? So the chapter 4, again, covers the topic of mobility and urban greening. It identifies future strategic transportation investments to encourage, active, healthier lifestyles within the city, a healthier community, really ultimately with the goal of healthier community, economy, environment. So as you can see here under purpose, support sustainable development that expands and improves transit and walking and bicycling infrastructure. Also provides opportunities to reduce vehicle miles traveled, or VMT, by supporting connectivity between housing, jobs, and other destinations to bring about a reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. And we've really bolded that point. I mean, that's a really key factor in this whole planning process. And one of the kind of most important requirements of the planning process per the state, grant requirements and funding. And so I wanted to just highlight that. And then some of the tasks we embarked on, conditions analysis, current conditions analysis, of course, compiling information on collisions, safety of transit facilities, analyzing adopted active transportation and transit plans. And I wanted to just mention that in this, throughout this analysis, the data came from a number of sources, including all of our public outreach engagement. So we were just listening to you and the members of the public about, what are some areas of opportunity or some issues within the city that we should be paying attention to. Okay, so what was our findings? So residents within the focus area are less likely to drive alone to work than residents outside of the focus area. We found residents within the focus area depend on walking, biking, and buses to do their daily errands. The largest barriers to active transit modes are typically what we found were collision rates and perceived crime. And then the community feedback suggested that residents really want more active transportation options to get to work, your regular appointments, school. So now let's talk about, the goals and strategies. So we start with goal number 5 because the plan is, again, kind of this overall, it's a continuation of our previous goals, right? So now we're diverting to this focus topic, but we're on goal number 5, which is improve walking and biking infrastructure. So you can see here some of the strategies: incentive program for destination facilities, prioritizing downtown connections, supporting infill development and redevelopment, enhancing wayfinding. And goal number 6, help people get to work, school, and important appointments. So, I mean, it's, we heard you loud and clear. We went ahead and made that one of the goals of the plan. And strategies included encouraging large employment center destination facilities, creating neighborhood slow streets, encourage shared and on-demand transit, and really just enhancing central transit, just making it more accessible and easier for folks to use. And then goal number 7, holistically increase safety and public health. So strategies include enhancing walkability, increase eyes on the street, prioritize safety, and tree inventory. So really what this is all about is just safety and comfort, the comfort of being able to use the street. So making sure that people are feeling safe, but then also things like, when we say tree inventory, what does that mean? Well, trying to think about opportunities for shading along the street so that it's a comfortable experience for people. And then this is the last of the topics. So this is chapter 5 of the plan, workforce development and economic opportunities. So chapter 5 of the plan covers this topic and describes the key factors in displacing small businesses and how to preserve these businesses in the future. So this chapter also included a workforce development, demographic, and labor market overview, basically a study to help us through the analysis, which identified gaps between the needs of job seekers and employers, and also training recommendations for how to effectively close those gaps. So as you can see here, the purpose: provide workforce training and education opportunities for residents of the focus area, creating high quality jobs with living wages and opportunities for advancement, supporting local and small businesses, and preventing the displacement. So the tasks we embarked on, similar to the others, a thorough existing conditions analysis on key population demographics and market characteristics, identifying the barriers to workforce development and maybe barriers to some of the existing programs that are currently in place, identifying those key gaps in services. As I mentioned before, there's a fairly thorough demographic and labor market overview study. So that helped to sort of identify these gaps and potential ways to close those gaps. And then, of course, identifying policies and programs to support small business economic opportunities and avoid displacement. Another set of findings: there are a diverse set of small businesses in the focus area. Hospitality, food, and leisure businesses are at the greatest risk due to the impact of the pandemic. Small businesses in the southern portion of the focus area, especially along Union Ave, are at a higher risk of displacement. Residents in the focus area face lower incomes, educational attainment, computer and internet access, and public transit ridership. They also encounter higher rates of rent burden, poverty, social assistance, single parent households, and also limited English proficiency. So with all that information, what are some of the goals? And again, this is now a continuation. So we're on goal number 8, which is increase and stabilize small businesses. So the strategies include, creating a small business alliance or no-cost, low-cost business development and retention programs, small business grant funding, and minority and women-owned business support. Also included under goal number 8, seed capital and technical assistance, neighborhood business and corridor support, innovation and entrepreneurial lab. And then for goal number 9, increasing workforce development. So we have here high school completion, GED programs and support, certification training programs, English learning programs, digital competency programs, childcare service expansion, job assistance programs, vocational training, leadership and job skills training. And with that, so as Cecilia and I've kind of mentioned before, this planning process is really just kind of an interim step in the overall process. It's helping to really kind of create the roadmap to then the implementation, which will occur after this plan is approved. And it's really intended to be like a living document and just aid the city and all of you and all the community members to try to attain grant funding opportunities, funnel those where they're needed the most, and try to be able to accomplish these goals and strategies that we've laid out in the plan. So with that, I'll hand it back to Cecilia.
All right, thank you, Asha. I appreciate that. So hopefully you got a lot out of that. Like Asha said, there's a lot more details in the plan. That was a very high level overview. So let's go ahead and do next slide. As I mentioned in the public outreach chapter, one of the activities we did was a call for projects. we kind of went over the different, these 3 topics, and went over the criteria, which is, you can't really read it, but you know, there's a bigger document that was sent out that kind of laid out what would make a fundable project under the TCC program. So we kind of indicated, based on those TCC strategies, we kind of gave people a guide of what to submit with their call for projects, what would make them competitive. You know, looking, does it address a community need? Is there greenhouse gas reductions? Does it address some sort of climate adaptation? Is there site control? That's a key thing. Housing, mobility. Is it a housing project? Is it a mobility project? Is it a workforce jobs potential project? Those are the things we were looking at. Does it implement an existing plan? Is there potential implementation partners that would be key to implementing this project? I mean, there's a lot of factors, and based on the information that was submitted, we asked key questions about each project. So we made sure we had enough information to score, to provide kind of what we called a readiness competitive score. And so for each project, you'll see in the you'll see those scores in, I think we put them in the outreach chapter, or no, actually it's in the roadmap. The roadmap for all the projects, we had received over 120 projects. So for all the projects we received, we applied to that criteria score. And then for when we did that scoring, we allowed the community to do a kind of prioritization exercise of the top, I think, 32 projects, you know, to see, okay, here are, you know, the fundable competitive projects that we received. Which ones are your priority? Which ones do you want to see? Sorry, I gotta admit somebody real quick. Which ones do you want to see implemented in your community? Which one is important to you? So that's kind of what we did through the kind of the what you'll see explained in the plan, the call for projects, the scoring, the criteria that went into that scoring. And in the appendix, you'll actually see a full roadmap of all the projects. I think the next slide we go through some examples. Okay, well, this is the project scoring. Call for, yeah, it's kind of what I was just saying. So we can go to the next slide. Sorry. Yeah, so this is a roadmap example. So this is what you'll see in the appendix. So for all of those 120 projects, we wanted to really give you clear feedback of not only what did it meet the criteria that we, but where it fit as far as meeting the criteria, but also if we were to implement this project, or how do we do that? What are the steps needed to get us there? So like, for example, we got an infill housing program. So we identified the kind of the resources required and readiness per the TCC guidelines, like what is needed to do housing and be fundable under this program. We listed the kind of who would be the implementing partner, whether it's the city or another entity. In this case, we identified both the city and the Housing Authority of Kern, and also possibly Habitat for Humanity. We're all community partners who've been attending our meetings and are in, you know, they can see potential partners for building housing with this funding. So, and then we listed the community benefits. One of the things that TCC really wants to see is those measurable outcomes. So we kind of gave guidance on what those measurable outcomes will be for each project. And then with kind of a basic description of what the project is. And then another thing that was key is not only TCC also wants to see leverage funding. They also want to see other either local investments, or we can even use federal funding or other funding sources that they show that are investing in the focus area. So these are all key areas that are really needed for kind of the next steps of seeing if a project can be implemented under this program. So next slide. This is another example I wanted to show you. Just as this is like a complete kind of a mobility example. So this was this is our highest ranking complete streets based on the community that we heard. So just, you know, for this we'll need, because it is in the public right of way, we'll need, engineering plans, possible environmental review, and just, city approval of what specifically can get done. Obviously, since the public right of way project, it would be overseen by our Public Works Department. And then these are kind of the measurable community benefits that TCC will want us to see us track. How many miles of bikeway was put in what class, how many feet of sidewalk or repair or installation, how many crosswalk improvements, a number of any shade trees, urban greening related to doing these, any bus shelter improvements or bike racks, those kind of things. Those are things that really show those greenhouse gas reductions. So those are things we would need to track and look and measure as part of this project. And then there's just a kind of a basic description, and then again, possible leverage funding that can go towards, to transportation projects potentially. So next slide. Kind of another example was, this is a transit example. So again, this was kind of one of our high-ranking transit projects that was submitted in the fall. And so again, we would need kind of readiness. We would need to, do our partnership agreement, do any updated transit services or plans related. It needs to show ability to increase ridership. So we need to show how it does that, and we need letters of support. Again, possible responsible parties would be the city and the GET, which is our main transit provider. Again, some measurable benefits that TCC program will want to see. Are there improved headways? Are there improved bus shelters? Does it actually increase ridership? And again, potential funding, other alternative funding sources as well. I think I have one more example. I think, yeah, this is kind of like a urban greening / healthy communities one. This was a high ranking, showed a lot of community support when we did the prioritization exercise. It's a urban garden, community urban garden. And so again, there's a lot of kind of resources and readiness that TCC wants to see. This is something that we have to make sure is all planned out and done by the time we apply. So there's, site control, environmental review, any partnership agreements, who would operate the garden, any business plan and operations, financial strategies, showing that there's a nonprofit that's running it, that has expertise in health, food access, and urban farming. So there's a lot of things that would need to be organized and set up to make sure we can get this project funded under the program. Again, possible partner would be the city, and ultimately a nonprofit that would be operating the garden. Again, the kind of community benefits that TCC would like to see, like how many garden plots are done. Are there, shade trees? That's mainly because we can get greenhouse gas reductions for any trees that are planted in the garden. Also, looking at flood control measures. Again, if there's potential for, at the time of this plan went out, we didn't identify any other potential funding sources, but doesn't mean we still can't explore and find some.
And I think just to point out too, that even though, one of these columns is kind of a TBD, we don't have information at this time. This happened to be one of those that came out really loud and clear in all the surveys and the community engagement. So we felt, it was important to, that's how it kind of scored even higher, regardless of the, potential funding. And also that, the whole purpose of this plan is to try to define and identify that readiness and get all that information gathered for the city and for all of you, so that the city can apply to get, to get funding for these projects. So just wanted to point that out too, that this was really one of those that rose to the top because of the community engagement and what we heard.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's a lot going on there. So, I just realized the Spanish one isn't Spanish. All right, I'll have to fix that. And then next steps, really, this plan really was meant to serve as a guide. I mean, we really wanted to show the community, yeah, you have a lot of great projects. We went over the key topics that we can address with this plan. We heard the projects from you, the projects that you would like to see implemented. but really, I mean, and we score them just to really provide you guidance of whether that project could be possibly fundable under this plan. Um, and so, but again, I mean, the scoring doesn't identify projects that are going to be ultimately a part of the application. It's really meant for a guide. So really next steps are really to form that community collaborative formally and with a partnership agreement. And it's actually this community collaborative that will really begin to, it's in a way, it's almost a quasi-organizational, government in itself. It's an organization you form with your partners. You establish governments, your organization, your financial relationships. That you basically, it's like an MOU or a partnership agreement that defines your role in this collaborative and what it identifies what you would be responsible for in the collaborative, and then ultimately as a collaborative, how you organize the decision making that goes on. So you establish, like I said, you establish partnerships with each potential partner, because as you implement projects, each of the partners will be in charge of doing their data collection and indicator tracking. Overall, as a collaborative, we need to make sure the community is engaged through the implementation process. And also we need to make sure any workforce development and economic opportunities and displace avoidance policies are kind of carried through project implementation. Next slide. Like I said, there's a formal agreement that you do. And with this collaborative, we need to do official project names. A lot of TC projects have their own brand and kind of marketing. They have their own vision statement, which is required in the application, and really a final defined focus area based on the final projects that are considered, they'll be ready and fundable by the time we apply. Again, TC partners, those are defined as both lead applicants and co-applicants, need to just demonstrate their ability to oversee, manage, and implement projects, because this is, like a lot of state grants, is a reimbursable grant program. So you need to show the financial capacity to adhere to that reimbursement process, meaning you will be funding every project up front and then submit an invoice to get reimbursed under the program. Next slide. Again, once we establish our collaborative and start, the next key step is really to figure out our decision-making criteria. The next key step is really making projects ready and making sure we get all those resources aligned. Because really, from what I've seen, the state wants to see those strong, not only the resources, but leverage. The state wants to see strong local investments. And every past awarded TCC project, even though they only require 15%, I haven't seen the newest guidelines yet. We're supposed to come out the 15th for the next round. But every awarded project has over 100% leverage. So that means for every dollar they ask for, there is an equal amount of local dollars or another match, either from another state funding source or another federal source that also invested in the focus area. Again, key thing is data and project benefit tracking. That's something that we'll need to get done. Next slide. Another key element they want to see is a climate adaptation and resiliency plan. Again, the partnership will need to draft that and be part of the application. Also, a community engagement plan, not only incorporating the community engagement that's already been done, but also discussing the plan for community engagement through project implementation. And just to let you know, TCC, they give us 5 years to once you're awarded, you get 5 years to implement projects. So it's a 5-year commitment. Next slide. So I'm really trying to gear up for the next phase. Like me and Asha have been saying, this is really kind of our initial roadmap. Really, we're going to start once we get this plan submitted to the state in December, I want to start the next phase of community outreach. So we're starting an outreach working group. So if you're interested, please send your name, email, and phone number to me. That's my email there. It's C Griego, CGRIEGO at bakersfieldcity.us. And let me know if you want to be part of this working group. And next slide. This is just I want to give you a little idea. If you want to be part of this working group, there will be some expectations. You will be expected to attend regular meetings and help coordinate community engagement activities. You will serve as a community contact about TCC program and projects. You will help build stronger ties with the community. You'll help extend ability to reach different audiences in the community. You will assist the formation of community outreach structure and participation process. You will help identify other key participants that need to be at the table that think are not there yet. And you will ensure that the collaborative has authentic engagement. So when I say working group, I do mean working. So this is just something that I wanted to make sure before you send me an email that it will be a commitment, like TCC program overall. It's a commitment. It's a commitment of your time. It's a commitment of your passion for seeing these projects carried through. So, and I think the one last, yeah, this is the end. So we'll get to questions in a minute, but again, there's my contact information again. And we wanted to also show you on our project website, bakersfieldtccplan.org, you can download the plan and you can also submit your comments. So right as you download plan, there's another button there where you click and it tells you, walks you through submitting a comment. So you can put in your comment and even ask a couple of questions about what type of comment it is. And it makes it really simple and easy. So we encourage you to use that format to submit your comments. So I guess we'll go ahead and go to our Q&A.
Yeah, and then just one more concluding statement. So I'm going to, in the chat, I put a link to the general project website to keep it easy if you wanted to click there. There also is a link, a direct link to the draft plan. But again, all of this is on the website, but I put a link to the draft plan. And then I'm also just about to put a link to where you see here on the screen, the Give Us Your Feedback tab. I'm going to put a direct link to there as well, just to make it really easy for you all. You can save these links and use them at your leisure. This presentation, as Cecilia said, is going to be recorded and posted to the website as well. So really the website is a great resource. You have all the information there. And wanted to also just highlight that we will need comments back on the plan by December 3rd, Friday, December 3rd. It's a really key date because we do need to kind of finish this step. There's obviously a lot more to come, but we do kind of have to check this off the list, and then those next steps will occur in the implementation stage. But we would love to hear from you by December 3rd, please. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Good point. So I think Adam's had his hand up, so I'll let him go first. I don't see any other questions, so just you so far, Adam.
Thanks, Cecilia. I've got a few comments that I'd like to kind of share based on kind of the draft plan. It's really important to distinguish between, census blocks and census tracts, because, a lot of the projects that are proposed, they're in disadvantaged census tracts, but not the most disadvantaged census blocks. So that's kind of the first comment I have. The second comment that I have is related to making sure that projects are re-ranked according to things that are in existing plans. So there are items that were proposed that are in existing plans that are eligible for regional, state, and federal funding that didn't show up in the rankings. The third comment that I have is related to some of the past engagements. There was an online engagement where we were asked to solicit feedback on proposed projects. Those ratings, which were captured in the recording that the city did, should be included in the plan. And those should be counted as valid public comments. And so those are kind of the three things that I want to mention. The fourth one is that if a project crosses more than one category, if it's like mobility and urban greening, for example, that should be given I think, extra points in the ranking process, because that's exactly how the Strategic Growth Council and other agencies are going to rate them, because it does more than just something that's in just one category. So that's kind of the feedback that I want to provide. And I'm hoping that the consultant will go through and kind of address those comments related to all of that, including the rankings. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Adam. We'll definitely consider that. I mean, the rankings are really meant for just as a guide, not a determining factor of what, but I do see the point of looking at existing plans again and making sure we capture some of those. So yeah, it'd be great if you can submit kind of any specific comments you have through the website, and we can make sure we have a kind of a written record. That helps too. And about that previous planning, that was kind of like it wasn't a planned meeting. It was kind of like a spare of the moment meeting that we did just to address some concerns. So, and I do believe all those concerns were met. I mean, I reviewed the notes that we took during that meeting and made sure any projects that were listed were part of the call for projects, or made sure whoever submitted that made sure that those were in there. So I'm pretty sure we captured most of those. If you think we've missed any, just again, I encourage you to submit it in the website. Just, we're humans, we can miss something. So I encourage you to just submit it in the comments, and we can make sure we can try to get anything you think we missed or didn't hear or didn't hear correctly the first time. So is there any other questions? Oh, he's okay. He submitted my email. He put my email in the chat. Yeah, the meeting's recorded and it's on our website, so I'm familiar with it.
Thanks, Cecilia. I appreciate it.
So, any other questions? They can raise their hand.
I wanted to give a quick shout out. I see some of our collaborative partners on in the meeting today. So again, we just really appreciate you helping us to, have an enhanced community engagement once we were able to kind of do some in-person things, and kind of just an extension of reaching out to those community members. So we really appreciate you all. Thank you. And if you have any comments or considerations, please feel free to speak up or use the chat.
Everybody's still reading. It's a lot to consume.
Yeah, it's a lot to read through, but we tried to make it as easy to follow as possible and organized. And again, you have plenty of time. We wanted to kind of hold this meeting earlier on in the public review process to sort of give you a little bit of a foundation of what the plan is. And then you have until December 3rd to provide further comments. And thanks again, Adam, for your comments. So we'll certainly be reviewing and considering every comment that comes in during the public review period. So.
And I'll just want to say we did decide to hold a second in-person meeting. But we have one our first one is today, tonight at MLK Community Center at 5:30. And then we're doing a second one at the latter end of the public review on November 30th. And that will be at the California Avenue Church right across from MLK. So 2 potential opportunities. Again, I'll just be going through the same presentation again and doing Q&A, similar format. So just to give if you know anybody who wasn't able to do the virtual version and preferred it, they are welcome. Please let them know about these other opportunities.
And if you want to, access the flyer, I know that Cecilia has been emailing it out to our mailing list, but if you want to access that, forward it to somebody. Again, the project website is where you can find that.
Let me see if there's any other questions. Everybody's quiet. Ready for their holiday tomorrow. Well, if there's any more questions, you guys are welcome to leave. We don't have any more content. But I'll probably keep this going at least for another, at least till another 7 minutes.
Yeah, just in case someone jumps on late or something.
Oh, I see Jacqueline. I haven't met you yet. Troy's new person.
Hi, everyone. I know I joined kind of late, but thank you for having me here.
Well, thank you. Looking forward to meeting you in person. Thank you, Emma. I'll go ahead and just stop the recording.